Jurassic Park. Now playing in theaters.
Ecto goggles with Ecto Bomber, neutron blaster, and water zapper, each sold separately.
From the corner penthouse of Spook Central all the way to Star Killer Base, this is Yes Have Some Podcast.
Do I? Yes, have some. Yes, have some.
You know, they told me you people were conceited douchebags.
The only place in the multiverse where you can love the book, hate the movie, but still buy all the toys.
I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.
I'm not looking for a friend. I'm looking for a Jedi Master.
What?
Please remember to hold on to your butts and get ready to get stressed. With your hosts, Craig Goldberg, Abigail Gardner, and Jacob Walsh.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Yes Have Some Podcast. My name is Craig Goldberg. Thank you, as always, for joining Yes Have Some Podcast. We have a very special bonus edition of YHS this week. This is the Ghostbusters State of the Franchise Roundtable discussion. We wanted to go ahead and get this conversation started early. We've got a lot going on in the Ghostbusters community. We've got a new movie on the horizon. We've got Ghostbusters Fan Fest happening in just a couple months. And we wanted to get a deep dive discussion going. So, Jake and Abby and myself invited a couple of our great friends to join us for this roundtable discussion. Joining us tonight is from Ghostbusters Virginia, the founder, the leader, and, well, you'll find out his new title, Dan Harshman. He's an old friend, one of the best dudes you'll ever meet, and very opinionated. So we had to have him on for the discussion. And then, of course, friend of the podcast, artist extraordinaire and lifelong Ghostbusters fan, John Yurcaba, is also going to be joining us. So, this episode was originally scheduled to be a Patreon exclusive bonus episode. We have our Yes Have Some Patreon feed. We do 2 to 3 bonus episodes a month. This was scheduled to be there only, but we thought the discussion was so good and we had so much fun and we covered so much ground that we did not want to keep everybody from hearing it. So we wanted to give everybody a chance to get in on the Ghostbusters State of the Franchise discussion. Now, having said that, we do want to invite you to join us over on Patreon to get in on these bonus episodes on a regular basis. For $5 a month, you're going to get 2 to 3 bonus episodes. We cover all sorts of stuff, not just Ghostbusters, but we love Ghostbusters. We talk about it all the time. And leading up to this new movie, we got about 15, 16 months. There's going to be plenty of additional bonus content happening on the Yes Have Some Patreon feed. So if you want to get in on that, you're going to go to patreon.com/yeshavesome. And as soon as you sign up, you're going to get access to our entire bonus episode archive. We started this last July, so it's about 6 months of bonus episodes you'll have access to right off the bat. So here's the deal. Once you're done listening to the Ghostbusters State of the Franchise Roundtable discussion, we want you to join Yes Have Some on social media. Instagram and Twitter at YHS Podcast, and of course the official discussion group on Facebook, Yes Have Some Group Therapy. Because we want to know what you think. We want to know how you're feeling about Ghostbusters. We want to know what your opinions are, your theories, your thoughts on the new movie, your thoughts on Ghostbusters Fan Fest. Let's get a good discussion going over on Group Therapy. All right. That's all I got for you right now. Let's get over to the roundtable. Like I said, we had a lot of fun, and the stress is real, everybody. It's happening. We're here, and we're ready for more Ghostbusters, and we are stressed out beyond belief. Here we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Yes Have Some Podcast and the exclusive Patreon episode. It is the end of February of 2019. And we are doing the first ever Ghostbusters State of the Union, and we're putting it behind a paywall. Because I think it's going to be good.
That seems to be the trend.
I think it's going to be good.
It's the Ghostbusters trend.
We're taking inspiration from Ghost for ourselves, and we're making you fucking pay for it.
Yes. We're calling this Class 15. So listen, this is what we're going to do. We got a nice roundtable discussion happening, but we got some special guests joining us, so I'm going to introduce them. Well, Jake and Abby are here too. I wouldn't consider them special guests.
Thanks.
But we have some guests, and we don't do guests all the time, so you know it's special. First off, all the way from California, just kidding, Arizona, by the way, through California though. John, I always forget where you are. but that's okay.
I forget where I am sometimes, but it's okay.
Friend of the podcast and artist extraordinaire, John Yurcaba. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going? I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Doing very well.
Doing
Doing
great,
very
man.
well. And from Ghostbusters, Virginia, probably one of my favorite people in the world and one of the, I don't know, the godfather of the Ghostbusters community. You need a title. He's something.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I like
I
that
like
too.
it. I'm behind that.
Well,
What's higher than king? I think it's pope, right?
That has like religious connotations.
the Pope of
He's the
Ghostbusters.
ghost pope. He's the ghost father.
Whoa.
Ghost Pope.
Ghost Pope? Ghost Pope is a good name, first of all. Plus, you get a hat.
Dan Harshman, how are you, man?
I am great. It is great to be back on the show. Hopefully Paul Feig doesn't show up again after I
I'm hoping he
put my
does.
foot in my
He's on the
mouth.
line.
He's on the
Knocked
line.
on.
Oh boy.
3 years ago, it was almost when we were doing we had just kind of launched the podcast. We were doing these live call-in shows and we kind of didn't know what we were doing. And we had Dan on. I was like, Dan, come on the show. We'll talk about Ghostbusters toys. And then like, oh, by the way, Paul Feig's on the line. Like, oh shit.
That was
spent, like,
amazing.
Yeah.
10 minutes talking about how I'm not terribly excited for the remake.
Yeah.
And then here's Paul Feig, step out of the editing suite to call into this budding podcast. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, like, I stand by what I said then. And I still stand by the fact that I think Paul Feig is one of the nicest individuals in Hollywood.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
He's a great guy. We'll have to have him back on the show sometime, but it won't be tonight. Because I doubt that he wants to talk about Ghostbusters.
How do you think things are going, Paul?
I actually, no lie, like when all the Jason Reitman stuff happened last week, like I don't bother him, but we have kept up like a little back and forth messaging for the last couple years. And after the whole thing went off on Twitter, I just messaged him and I was like, hey, do you miss being part of Ghostbusters? And he, in so many words, was like, fuck no. So what we wanted to do is get everybody together, get some Ghostbusters expertise and experts, I should say, with expertise, and get everybody's kind of opinion on where we are right now, where we think we're going, where we've been, because, man, in some ways, and I guess I could just kick it off, I feel like we're kind of in the exact same place we were 3 years ago, except for it feels a lot. The circumstances are the same, but the feelings are different. It's like when it's like your mom's getting remarried for the third time, but this time she found a guy who's like, oh, this might be the one.
He could be good.
She's getting married for the third time, but she's getting married to your actual father again. So it's like, okay,
And
Come back.
That's
but
fact.
for some reason you can't stop bitching about the last one, right?
Right. Last dad's out of the picture, but we still got to complain about him.
No, it's like if your mom is marrying your father's son.
That's what I was going to say.
Wait, hold on.
We've crossed the line. Well, cool. So how about we do opening statements, and we'll let our guests go first. John,
Oh man.
we're gonna make this like a it's like a debate style. You have 30 seconds to respond. No. What are your
Town hall meeting.
I guess we should for anybody who doesn't know, we've got a new Ghostbusters movie coming out. There's still an animated movie supposedly in the works. We've got Ghostbusters Fan Fest. Everybody knows what's going on. So John, taking all that in, how are you feeling?
I'm hopeful. I'm feeling pretty hopeful. I like everything that I'm hearing about the new movie. I like that FanFest is a thing that's happening. I wish we knew more, but of course they're probably going to tease it out until the end. But I like that there's more Ghostbusters being talked about more, and it seems like it's in a more creatively positive light, or at least it seems like a lot more people are behind the direction it's in. So that's good. And I like, the thing I love the most about it is the way that Jason talks about it when he, tweets or posts or does an interview or something. He makes it plain and clear that he's a fan. He's doing this to, he's making a movie for the fans. He grew up loving Ghostbusters. Even when he, had to clarify his comments the other day, he said it in a way where he was talking about like he loves Paul, he loves the ladies, and he appreciates that they added an exciting chapter to the universe. And unless you're someone who's already thinking about Ghostbusters as a whole and the fact that it is a universe with a ton of stories happening in it, you're not going to refer to it as they added a chapter to the universe. You're just going to say like, oh, they made a great film. But just the fact that he said it in that way makes me think like this guy's head is in the right place, and that's exciting.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Cool. Dan, rebuttal. I'm just kidding.
No, I think John hit the nail on the head. One of the interesting things about having been an active part in the community for so long is to watch the public excitement of Ghostbusters ebb and flow. And it seems to run in cycles, and we're in a really heightened cycle right now. And the last time, of course, we experienced that was with the announcement of the remake. And then, before that, it was the 88 miles per hour comic book series or the video game. It's just interesting to me to see how the community works and responds to what Sony gives us, and how we react to that and how we move forward to it. Some projects have had lots of excitement behind them, like the video game. Other projects have been very divisive, and I would say that goes as far back as to even Extreme Ghostbusters was very divisive when it was first announced. So it's interesting to me, but it's also very exciting. I think we're seeing the most amount of product for Ghostbusters, and I really think a lot of that still has to do with the remake. I think that really brought Ghostbusters back in, not just as a film, but as a marketable product. I mean, we've seen more products for Ghostbusters since the 2016 remake than we had since 1988 and 89 with Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, that is a true statement. We just recorded another episode, and we were actually talking about that, how there is no, like, it can be easy to, like, when it's easy to be cynical and be like, oh, there's so much, X, Y, and Z from other franchises, but there's a ton of Ghostbusters stuff out there that's being released all the time. Jake, how are you feeling?
I mean, I feel fine. I think I completely agree with Dan and John here, and I think just like you were saying, it feels like we are in the same boat, but almost like in a completely different
ocean.
Exactly. We're in the same boat, but we're in a new ocean. It's like completely new. It's exciting. I feel like we have nothing to be complaining about with the amount of things that are happening. We're getting so much. I'm just happy to be open and excited that we're gonna get a new movie, and we're gonna get Fan Fest, and we're gonna go to Sony, and there's just all this fun stuff happening. So I think as a community, as a franchise, I feel like we're in a pretty good place right now.
Abigail.
Yeah. I mean, I echo everything that the three of you just said. Honestly, I'm excited about the creativity point like John brought up. I think that this movie, I love the little teaser that we got. I like the fact that the image for it, that Jason Reitman used like practical effects to make the summer 2020 thing, and I just like everything that I'm getting from this movie so far. But beyond that, I mean, it has like it feels like 2016, but it does feel like there's more of a chance this time. Like, especially since it's within the family, I feel like a really strong confidence about this movie, and it's just very exciting to have Ghostbusters in the news again, and have FanFest like on the horizon in tandem with like all of this stuff coming out. I'm giddy thinking about what kind of surprises we could get there that would be tied in with this movie, with the new movie, and I'm just stoked. I feel very like a little bit wiser from the events of 2016 and from Answer the Call, but I feel like everybody's wiser, and I feel like Sony probably is, and Ghost Corps for that
Abby,
matter.
will you expand on that? Like, that's interesting. Like, when you say wiser, like, what from your personal experience of going through
that there's an audience out there that's craving and that wants more Ghostbusters, but I think that they want it to be in like a continuity with the originals, which is what we're now getting. So
Yeah.
I think like it feels like so whenever 2016 happened and we learned that it was going to be a reboot and everything was going to be completely new, it was like a couple years of a lot of like trying really hard to just be open to everything, stressed out about everything we saw. What's it going to look like? What's it going to sound like? What's the equipment going to be like? What's Bill Murray doing in this movie? Is it connected? There was like a lot of, it was stressful. It was stressful. And whether you like or dislike the final product, the fact that now we kind of don't have to, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's like, you know what? We're getting some original stuff here. We can kind of relax and kind of enjoy this ride a little more as opposed to being like, what are the packs going to look like? Who's going to be playing who? What's going to, it's going to be a different experience leading up to the movie, I think.
I think too, it's also, it's funny. I feel like Star Wars, there was an awakening. But I feel like there was a sort of realization by both people on the filmmaking side and also people on the audience side of just like not understanding or not realizing that Ghostbusters is kind of like, it is a franchise that you can do a legacy sequel with. It is a franchise that has different iterations and different things that can be connected and different ways that it can be expanded. I think for a long time, people just kind of looked at it like, oh yeah, Ghostbusters, it's the number one comedy of all time, one of the greatest 80s movies. And I think now people are understanding like, oh no, hold on. Like we're actually sitting on like an actual franchise. Like after seeing Star Wars and its legacy sequels and seeing some of the stuff they've been doing with Star Trek and seeing how the Marvel universe has grown and seeing all this establishment of like, you can have these big interconnected stories, you can expand the universe, you can pick franchises up years later and still see the value in continuing that story, even if it's not necessarily with the same characters, but you don't have to start it over. Like people are took a hard look at Ghostbusters and said, like, not only is there no reason we can't do this, we've already kind of done it with like Extreme Ghostbusters and the video game and even some of the comics. Like they've played in that arena. And so to be in a position now where we're actually going to get a true Ghostbusters legacy sequel, I mean, it's funny because like for the people who have been fans for a long time, we're all sitting here just like, duh, of course that's what should happen. But I think it's funny to now see people who, all these articles coming out like, do we need more Ghostbusters? And it feels like for every one of those that comes out, there's an article or an uproar of like, of course we like, do you not understand this? And it's fun to have somebody who, like I was saying earlier, like Jason was a fan. He grew up with Ghostbusters. He sees like, of course, this is what you do with Ghostbusters.
Mm-hmm. It's a movie that parents show their kids, and it's like a big moment. Like it's a memorable deal. Yeah. Similar to Star Wars.
Yeah, and the cool thing is like, Star Wars definitely has its own appeal to kids. But the thing that I've always loved about Ghostbusters is there is just this visceral, like, bare bones concept of like most kids are afraid of the dark. They're afraid of what's under their bed. They're afraid of what's under the closet. And then their parents are like, hey, kid, watch this show, watch this movie, read this comic. And then, they're in it for like 10 minutes and they're just like, oh, you mean I don't have to be afraid? And boom, they're hooked. Like you teach a kid, like, here's how you don't have to be afraid of the dark. And now you got a Ghostbusters fan. Like it's a concept that you can revisit it 2 days from now, 2 weeks from now, 2 years from now, 20 years from now, and put whatever the modern spin on it is. Ghostbusters will always be a thing that will have an audience.
Absolutely. Dan,
I think one of the
talk.
Yeah.
Go for it.
One of the interesting things that John touched on, he mentioned Marvel. And I really think this is actually one of the unsung heroes with how we're getting this movie comes down to another Sony property. And that's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Sony learned a very interesting lesson when they co-contracted with Marvel Studios and did Civil War. They had, Amazing Spider-Man 2 was still drying, at the time that they signed that deal. The sequel had flopped. Sony saw that, this remake of their Spider-Man franchise wasn't moving forward, and they gave the reins over to Marvel. And I really think they expected that fans and audiences would be tired of Spider-Man and that the deal wouldn't work out. And obviously, the opposite is true. And it showed Sony that passionate fans are willing to continue to consume and accept reiterations of their favorite characters with no cooldown time, which is not something I think people thought beforehand. So I really have to kind of hand it to Sony for leasing Spider-Man over to Marvel and allowing Civil War to happen and Homecoming and everything, because I really think that paved the way for the execs to see that, Answer the Call wasn't the tentpole smash hit that we wanted it to be, but we can still recover. And the fan base is still going to be behind us on this. And they're still going to support us on this. And I think that's something that hasn't been talked about.
That's a really interesting point. And you kind of get the vibe. There was that interview with Jason Reitman on the Bill Burr podcast where he said, him and Gil Keenan wrote a script in secret. I'm sure somebody knew about it. I'm sure Ghost Corps knew that Jason Reitman was working on his script.
He just locked himself in one of the conference rooms, and they were like, "Is that Jason? What's he doing in there?" And his dad's like, "Just leave him alone."
Dan Aykroyd has known that they were writing a script since 1998, right?
You guys weren't.
Jason's been sitting on this for a minute.
You guys weren't. In our last episode, we were discussing whether or not Dan Aykroyd, if they even let him read the script. Or if they're or because the odds of him just spilling the beans on key details are very high. But no, so Jason writes this script, and I'm on a first name basis with him, obviously. And they go to Sony, and Sony goes, "Cool, go make it." And he's like, "Wait a minute, I've never made a big franchise film before, but it's not supposed to go like this." But Dan touched on the point of maybe if he came in and said, here's a script, it's a legacy sequel, has the original characters, passes the torch and opens up the franchise to new possibilities, we can do it for $75 or $80 million, and we're going to cast a bunch of unknowns so you're not going to have to spend a lot of money on big name actors. Why Sony might have been like, maybe a couple years ago they wouldn't have, but because of what Dan was just talking about, go do it. It's been 3 years. Let's make it happen. Let's fix
it.
There's also because I think he mentioned in one of the interviews that he pitched the script to Sony in December or something. I forget when it was.
Yeah, it was December.
December.
And so at that point, you've got to imagine they've had their experience, like Dan was saying, with Marvel and Spider-Man and all that. They're also, they've just, depending on when he pitched it, they've either just released or they were about to release Spider-Verse. And up until then, every trailer, everything, people were super hyped for that. So they're at the peak of hey, legacy characters, passing the torch, building a universe. This is what we need to do. We need to let people who are passionate about the characters come in and do their thing. We need to trust the people who have the ideas. And then Jason comes in and says, guys, I got an idea for Ghostbusters. There are other, outside of Spider-Man, that's their bread and butter. And then, they've got Men in Black coming out, which also looks like they're following the same track. So they're just in that mode of yes, let's do this. Let's get all of our brands on track. Let's make this happen. And so I definitely think it was a matter of Jason being in the right place at the right time with the right idea.
And also, let's not forget that the full story has never come out, but I think it's safe to say that there was definitely major clashes between the Paul Feig camp and the Ghost Corps camp. So you don't have to deal with cranky Ivan Reitman if his son's the one directing it. Sony's gonna be like, you guys go figure this out. No, I love Ivan Reitman. We all know what happened in the last movie. It got made kind of behind his back, and he didn't really. They kind of had their baby taken away from him. now they got it back. And so kudos to Sony for giving it the green light, and also like this is like the fastest development of a franchise film ever. Like they just announced the sequel to Aquaman's not coming out till 2022. So literally, like it's
because,
almost.
But that's because they
hoping you'll forget the last one.
That's because they need all that time to render that fucking dumb looking underwater hair.
Oh yeah, the way it moves.
Strand by strand.
Listen, all I know is that in 2016, I spent months obsessing over a blind bag figure of Kevin who happened to be wearing a classic proton pack, and I don't have to do that again.
No.
And I'm happy about
Exactly.
Yeah.
My favorite Ghostbusters character, Kevin. Here's a question for the group. Is there anything? Okay, so I don't want to harp on negatives, but like it basically is just the way the world is right now because of everything that happened with Answer the Call, and because of the political climate in our country and the hot take climate of the internet and Twitter. Anything with Ghostbusters right now, people are there's going to be controversy. Like it's going to flare up again and again. Do we think that the brand and the sane members of the community and just the actual fan base is strong enough to like withstand the
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. We've been through it once. That's what I think.
Okay.
We're tough.
Are you asking like, can we withstand?
Wait, hold on. What's the question?
No.
We're all just like, no, we're great.
No.
Shut up.
No, not if it sucks, but like
this. I'm hitting the buzzer.
So right, exactly.
We're fine.
What I'm saying is the negative backlash was so strong against Answer the Call that it actually affected box office. Like it subconsciously got into people's head that it was a bad movie before everybody found out that it was a mediocre movie.
You're saying is that stigma is still attached to Ghostbusters?
I'm saying is
will that affect?
Is there a chance that the new movie comes out and it isn't, even if it's great, like people there's controversy that keeps people from the theater?
Here's
if it's great, then people will not keep away from it.
I really think what you're touching on is, will the controversy behind Answer the Call transfer over to the new movie? And that has been actually one of my concerns. I think you and I actually discussed that, how will this movie separate itself from Answer the Call and communicate to audiences that this is actually a third film in the franchise and not a second film to a remake franchise. And I think that's really going to be dependent on how the film is marketed and who precisely they cast. Jason.
You go ahead. My bad.
Jason, Ghost Corps, all that have been very, very mum on their casting decisions. But I think one of the big ones that's going to be able to bring people in is going to be seeing our legacy characters, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Ernie Hudson, as Peter Venkman, Ray Stantz, and Winston Zeddemore. If they can communicate that to audiences, I think that will shake off that drama surrounding the remake, and I think that will bring audiences back into theaters for it. I think the community, I don't think the community is going to be affected. One way or the other, the community survived Answer the Call and the monumentous amount of shit posting that happened with Answer the Call. But, we didn't see any kind of fluctuation in numbers with, fan events like PKE Surge or,
if anything, it went up.
Charity events.
Yeah,
it went up. I mean, we had more people. It shot even Ghost Heads, shot up the awareness. And if anything was going to crumble the franchise, it's going to be Ghost Heads.
Yeah. We survived Answer the Call and Ghost Heads.
Abby, you barely survived Answer the Call and Ghost Heads.
Yeah, that was a tough year. I've been in recovery. I'm good now.
I agree with Dan. I think it's gonna kind of come down to what the actual trailer looks like, because the general audience they might hear Ghostbusters and maybe assume it's going to be a sequel to Answer the Call, but if they make a good trailer and they put that point across immediately,
music
that
original,
we're seeing a sequel, music, seeing those actors like that's what's going to do it. A good
I'll
trailer.
tell you what they need to do. Like a good trailer for this would start out where like you have a shot of the firehouse and it talks about 35 years ago, 4 men saved the
stop
world.
it! Stop it! They did that.
I need to call a hotline.
3 years ago.
Dude.
And that's actually one of the things that I think disappoints me about this is like the marketing for Answer the Call, like the trailers and the music behind the trailers and everything were really cool. They were really good. That first Answer the Call teaser, if you go back and you watch it, setting aside all your predispositions about Answer the Call, whether you liked it or didn't, that is a cool trailer. It gets your blood flowing. 35 years ago, here's the firehouse. People answered the call, and you have these slap shots going through. It's a really, really well done teaser, and they wasted it.
Yeah, I feel like, and I feel like tonally, this movie is going to feel very different. Like, I feel like I don't know if you guys saw yesterday, the official Ghostbusters Facebook page started responding to people's shit posts about.
I love. God, I want to know who this is so bad.
Dan, I don't know if you saw it.
It's probably Dan.
So basically, somebody was like, "This is a cash grab. I can't believe this," and they responded with like, "We're on the cusp of the franchise rights alone."
The franchise rights.
Yeah.
Just started quoting
And somebody
the
said, "This is going to be this is going to be Fire Festival," and they just responded with an orange square. Like, it's funny.
It's amazing. It's nice to see that like hard edge witty comedy being subtly like driven into even how they're responding to the public on something as small as a Facebook page.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I was going
You look like something Peter Venkman would post in response to like a bad Yelp review or something.
But what I was going to say was there was another post. I don't remember what the specific post was, but a couple people were like, somebody was like, "I hope the new movie uses practical effects." And they responded, they were like, "We're definitely using a lot of practical effects." And they like
we can't afford digital anymore.
Exactly. We don't have the budget for Ryan Dole and his crew to work on the movie.
It's okay, they're Oscar.
I was gonna say fucking Academy Awards.
Ryan's an Oscar winner. They really can't afford Ryan Dole.
Their rates went up.
Special effects anymore.
But don't you guys think like Jason Reitman is like, he's a legit filmmaker, and I keep getting this. The thing I keep going back to is that the guy he's an Oscar nominee. He's had an incredible career. He hasn't wanted to do Ghostbusters. In fact, I remember for years on GB fans message boards when somebody would go, "Maybe Jason Reitman could direct Ghostbusters," I'd always be like, "You fucking idiot. Don't say that. That's not going to happen." That's like people, if somebody was like, "Maybe, Violet Ramis Steele will be Egon's daughter in the new movie."
She
like,
started it.
watch, that's going to happen for some reason. So I'm just going to stop correcting people. But like, yes.
I'm so nervous about Jason being attached to it.
Okay, let's
everything
explore.
that he's saying. What's that?
I said, yeah, let's explore that.
Yeah, so I love his movies. He is obviously a very good director. I don't question his directorial authority. I think what I'm nervous about is that he is related to the original director, and we've had a host of movies that have tried to rely on that kind of pedigree to sell their movie. Namely, the Predator movie recently. They're like, "Oh, Shane Black is writing it." I'm like, that movie was horrendous. There were several times that I actually considered walking out of the theater because it was so awful. And then you have another film like Solo, which I don't think was as horrendous. It was a fun romp. It wasn't, the best Star Wars movie by any means. But, one of the things they touted with it was, Lawrence Kasdan and his son are writing Solo.
Right.
So that aspect does make me nervous, just because I don't want to put all of the credit in being like, oh, well, it's Jason Reitman's doing it, so we're safe. I'm still nervous about it, but at the same time, I'm excited about it. I'm excited because I think, as you touched on, Craig, this is going to be something that we're not expecting. This isn't going to be Ghostbusters 2. Ghostbusters 2 is just Ghostbusters. It's the same movie said again. And then Answer the Call is the same movie said again.
They keep making the same movie.
This is new.
They've made it twice now. A bunch of 30-year-olds going to business busting ghosts. So I'm excited about the prospect that it's going to be something new and exciting and different, and it'll push the boundaries of that universe. And as John said, there's so much rich storytelling that we can do that. This doesn't need to be, as much as my 8-year-old fanboy wants this to just be about my favorite Ghostbusters busting ghosts in Manhattan and saving the world. It doesn't need to be that story.
Yes.
It can be something.
Yes.
It can be something more personal. It can be small town upstate New York. Maybe these kids are the ones that accidentally release something horrendous on the town, and they have to find old Grandpa Aykroyd to save the day. I don't know, but that's exciting and anxiety inducing for me. Those are my thoughts. Exploring that idea.
Jake, what do you think about, do you think, do you think there's a potential hazard with having Jason Reitman there? And then touch on what Dan was just saying about how this movie is more than likely going to be different, and whether or not, what you think about that, basically.
Sure, there's a potential hazard, but I feel like there's a potential hazard with anybody. I do agree with Dan. It is always a little concerning when people are just automatically like, oh, he's related, so he's just as good. That makes no sense. Just being related to somebody does not instantly qualify you for the job. But I also do feel good about the fact, you were speaking earlier, it's not it doesn't feel like he's just jumping into it because he's related. It does feel like he legitimately thinks he has a good story. And you can't ask for anything better than that. As far as the movie being completely different, I hope it is, because, they're never going to be as good as Ghostbusters Part 2, so they might as well make it completely different. I think that's probably the best way to go.
You collect your paycheck from Ron Daniels now or later?
Ghostbusters 2 is one of the best movies I ever seen.
Why isn't he on our roundtable?
No, I think making it different is a good way to go, because when we've talked about this before, when we had years and years of all casting rumors and Seth Rogen's going to be the new kind of Peter Venkman character, all that shit, that's not what that's the obvious way to go, just four new Ghostbusters. That's not what I want to see. I think that's the least exciting, going in a completely different way. We joked about, Craig, you joked at one point about Dan Aykroyd's going to win an Oscar for Ghostbusters 3. I want to see that happen. I want to see Logan.
Yes.
I want to see fucking Logan, but Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
But it's such a New York movie, I'm so sick of hearing that.
We can't have it without Bill Murray. I know, I'm sick.
Show me any kid who's ever watched Ghostbusters I liked it. It's that New York City flavor. Abby,
oh my goodness.
Abby, same question.
Yeah. Oh God. I'd have to say that I feel more confidence rather than a disconcertion. Is that a word? Less anxiety, and I feel more confident. Yeah, I think moving thinking about this being the son of Ivan Reitman, I feel like at least he has his blessing, which is different than in 2016 with Paul Feig. So you have a relationship with the original creator, director, whatever. And I think that is going to pan out well for this movie. I am absolutely thrilled that it's not going to be a rehashing of the same story, which, as Dan pointed out, we've already had 3 times now. So I'm excited for something fresh. I'm excited for it to be possibly like within the lineage, the family line. Like, it's, look at, the Star Wars saga. Like, it's not like every movie is A New Hope retold. It's like you follow the family members, the characters and their story. So it would be really cool to see our world, Ghostbusters, explored, and that universe explored in that fashion with potential. Like, we all think that these are Egon's kids, probably, or like that would be really neat. I would love to see this be a completely different story, and fresh and exciting, and something for all generations, and for it to be moving and like emotional. And the fact is, that's what Jason Reitman said the idea was. It was moving and emotional for him, so much so that Sony was like, yeah, this is fucking sweet, let's do it.
And I think that's when you guys bring up the Logan thing, I think it's look, I don't think this is going to be a dark, gritty, like,
right.
Right.
That's not what
but I do
wish there
think,
was
like,
an F word.
when you hear people who, there's been people when they talk about the kids being cast, I've heard some trepidation where people are like, it just needs to be funny. Ghostbusters is a comedy. It's just a comedy. It's just a comedy. And it's just like, but it doesn't have to be just a comedy. If you want to build this world, go build the world. How do you build a world? You need characters with character development and emotional arcs. And I really hope we get that. And I kind of feel like we might. John, what do you think?
Whew. Craig, this is a big question. I got a lot of thoughts. I think all of you.
Well, we're out of time.
I got a lot of thoughts about this. Oh, no.
I'm going to get a snack.
But no, literally, like, I always tell people this. My connection and my love for Ghostbusters never came from the Ghostbuster that I thought was the best, or which one I wanted to play when I was a kid with my little Kenner Proton pack. Like, anytime I imagined anything new having to do with Ghostbusters, it was me imagining myself as a Ghostbuster, either working with the team or running my own team, and then reporting back to them at the end of the day with like, we caught 8 ghosts today, give me a raise, or whatever. And
John, is that how you operate in the real world?
Yes.
I drew 5 pictures. Give me a raise.
I'm just picturing like a 10-year-old John, and he, like, the thing that's most important to his play is that he gets a raise.
Yes.
I wish I could really harp on him, but I do have distinct memories of playing Ghostbusters and busting the ghost, and then going to my mother and asking for money from her, and her, doing the miming of giving me money, and me being disappointed because it wasn't real money.
Well, the ghosts weren't real either, Dan.
Oh,
but
the work
you don't
was.
know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my connection to it. Like, that is where my love for it comes from, is just as a kid wanting to see what the world of Ghostbusters would be like when I was old enough to actually be a Ghostbuster, whether it's 18 or 21, or if they put an age limit, like when you're adult enough to, like, if that were a real job, have that job. And so even though that's not necessarily the future this film is going to portray, it's still the idea of, like, what does that world look like now? What does that world become? How does it grow? How does it get bigger? One of the most frustrating things for me as a fan over the past 35, I would say 35, but just since Extreme Ghostbusters ended, is that the characters in that world just kind of feel like they've been stuck in a stasis, kind of. And I mean, for as much fun as the video game was, and I love the crap out of it, it felt like Ghostbusters 2.5, because it introduced a handful of ghosts, but the overarching story felt like this is about tying up a couple loose ends from the first 2 movies. And what I want is for someone to tell me a Ghostbuster story where it's 2020, 2019, 18, it's the present. We figure out where everyone is, if they're still alive. Like, tell us what has happened. Tell us why we're here.
Spoiler alert, one of them is not.
What? No, but seriously, like, tell me what has happened since the last time we saw them. Tell me why it matters. Tell me what's going on now and show me how we're going to move forward. Because I swear, if I have to read or watch or anything, one more anything Ghostbusters that involves them fighting Gozer, not growing the company, not developing new gear, and spending half the time making jokes, I'm going to get upset.
John, whatever could you be talking about?
But no, like I want, like when I sit, like if I was, I have so many thoughts.
But
no,
Gozer's a robot now.
Oh God. Anyway, no. Like
So it's
I
different.
just want somebody, because people, and we talked about this before, Craig, like people boil down the Ghostbusters to like the heart and the brains and the mouth and the everyman. And one of the reasons I think people don't like
Queef.
one of the reasons I think people give Ghostbusters 2 a bad rap is because in the first film, you can get away with that. Like, we're exploring a new world, a new concept, a new everything. We don't need really intricate character work to get us through that movie and be entertained by it. The second time through, you start to kind of wonder, like, is this just the same thing? And then the third time, the fourth time, 2 games, 3 comics, and all this other stuff later, you're like, this really is just it, isn't it? Like, we're just going to get this.
It's like we don't know anything about those characters, basically. Yeah. It's like we know that they bust ghosts.
I think,
and that's it.
Yeah, and I think what's funny is that when you look at, like, if you were to just, like, if I said, Jake, right now, tell me who Ray Stantz is, you would tell me the stuff that's in the movie, and then anything else that you know about that character that makes you love him is probably stuff that's either come from, like, background materials, or it's just been kind of like cooked up by the fans. Like, a story about how he and Peter met in high school, or how his Aunt Lois, like, it's stuff like that as fans who have taken in everything that there is to offer, we might be able to conjure up this image of like what Ray was like as a kid and all that stuff. But if you're just someone who's seen, the 3 movies that have been released and that's it, there's nothing there. And I want to see that movie where you, like, if in the continuity of the films, Egon is dead, we're going to have to see Ray and Winston and maybe even Peter deal with that emotional fallout. That might be a core part of this story and why Ghostbusters isn't a thing anymore. And it's exciting to me to actually think about getting some real in-depth character development, and then seeing that mixed in with like the creepy ghosts and the action of busting them and all of this other stuff that we already love about Ghostbusters, to now have character development that pushes that story forward and takes it to new places and makes you feel things that aren't just like, that was funny, that was scary. That's exciting to me. Like, that is what I crave. And the idea that this could go anywhere after this, like this might lead to, hey, now the company is back up and running and we're opening new franchises, or maybe it's just this small intimate thing, like whatever it is, like, God, take it to new places, bring in more characters. Like, it should not just be Ray, Egon, Winston, Peter, Janine. If, like, Ghostbusters, like I said earlier, like Ghostbusters is a thing, like everything you need to know about it is right there in the title. This could lay dormant for another 50 years and someone could come along and watch the old movie and be like, hold on, I have an idea, and pick it back up right where it left off and like say, but it's 50 years later. Like, there's no, like, it is what it is. And there's no reason that you can't tell a good story that picks right up where the last one left off. My dream has always been to have a story about Ghostbusters in New Orleans and in the swamps and doing creepy stuff in there and chasing ghosts in the South, like True Detective style. Like, to me, that is, like, I want that. That is my dream. That's my dream project. Sony, hit your boy up. Like, I got it in my head. I have a theme song.
Sony's not on the Patreon.
A theme song? I want to hear a theme song.
Right now, I will do. You want me to do it?
No. Yeah. Real quick. No. Well, that's another episode. No, John, I completely agree with every single thing that you just said. And I think this leads me to another question, and I think I'm the first person to bring this up. So
is Oscar going to be in it?
Stop it. Okay, here's my question. What are the odds that if you asked Ivan Reitman who Kylie was, he would know? I say 0.
0.
He'd be like, get away from me. No, my question is, one of the criticisms of The Force Awakens I personally love that movie, but one of the things that you hear people talk about is that there was so much space between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. There's a lot of stories that we missed out on that are probably really important. Like, you know, we saw Luke and Kylo, what happened with them in The Last Jedi, and they told it in a couple flashbacks, but there's probably a really great long-form story that needs to be told about that. So one of my concerns is that if this movie is picking up in present day and they do, you know, if they recap some of the last 30 years, is there going to be that? It's hard because we've wanted a new Ghostbusters for so long, but could there be the possibility of reinforcing the bum out factor of, man, really wish Harold Ramis would have been alive to do this, you know, the right way? Like, is there any risk of that?
So to me, I think no. I think obviously, like, everybody wishes he was still here. Everybody wishes we'd gotten Ghostbusters 3 ages ago, and that it would have been great, and that we'd be like neck deep in 2 new cartoons and a Netflix series and all kinds of stuff. But to me, like, I don't know, and this is going to sound really callous, and I hope that people understand, like, I have so much love for the people who made the first 2 films, people who've made all the Ghostbuster stuff. Like, that's my childhood right there. But to me, like, I love Ghostbusters for Ghostbusters' sake, and I would love to, you know, have them address, like, where Egon is and what happened in the past 30 years in flashbacks, just to move the story along for, like, this movie's sake. But to me, one of the exciting things is, what if we get, like, you know, some direct to DVD animated films that are just like, hey, here's a film about, you know, this thing. Like, we could have like a series of short films or something that just covers that space
filling in the blank
between Ghostbusters 2 and this film.
Yeah.
We can see, like, the last big case that all 4 of them were able to work together before whatever led to Egon not being there. We could see maybe they actually had a 10-year span after Ghostbusters 2 where they started setting up franchises, and maybe some big thing happened that led them to be, like, whether it was Egon's death or not, like, it led them to shrink things down and eventually shut it off. Like, there's so much potential of what could be the stories that could be told and done, especially if they do it in animation, that it's like, it sucks that he's gone, but it is what it is. And there's every in the world at our fingertips to be able to go back and tell those stories and do it in a really successful way.
Dan, same question.
I mean, I agree with a lot of what John said. I really do hope that they are able to communicate through exposition what happened to Egon. I think it would be foolish to not acknowledge his legacy in some fashion, or his character's legacy in some fashion. I think the potential for, you know, the death or disappearance of Egon being the catalyst for the breakup of the Ghostbusters is a fascinating story idea, and I'm really hoping that that's actually part of it. You know, we don't know, but that's one of my, like, little fan hopes that will probably eventually be destroyed. But I don't think, you know, Egon not being there is going to affect it, because, yeah, the Ghostbusters are the Ghostbusters. It will be great to see the passing the torch, that communication from one group to another, in whatever fashion that they decide to do that with. But I think John really summed up most of how I feel about that and the potential for that story pretty well. I have to say I agree.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap up here in just a few minutes. So let's just do some rapid fire things people are talking about. Jake.
Yo.
We've talked about this. Do you think Bill Murray will be in this movie? If so, is it a major role, a minor role, and does he need to be in there? Like, there's plenty of articles that say Bill Murray is Ghostbusters. If you don't have him in there, then you're kind of dead on arrival. What do you think?
I used to be the kind of person who thought that way. I used to, you know, like when there were years and years of Ghostbuster rumors, but like, oh, we can't get Bill Murray to do it. I used to be one of the people who was like, why won't you just fucking do it, Bill Murray? It's not going to be good without you in it. Like, that used to be me. I don't think that anymore. I don't think, like, especially if this is going in a different direction, and if it ends up in any of these directions that we have kind of come up with on our own here, like more dramatic or whatever, like, he definitely doesn't need to be in it. I don't think so. Yeah. Will he be? That's a hard question, because I've always just thought no. I thought when he agreed to cameo and answer the call, I always felt like maybe he felt like that was his last thing. It was his way out. I always figured that Bill Murray was like, hey, I can do this. This is what they're doing now. I'm off the hook. I don't have to do this anymore, because that's just how he seems. But again, if this movie is going in a different direction, if it's a little more dramatic, if it's going to be kind of a send-off, if it's going to have any bit of like a send-off to Harold Ramis / Egon in it, maybe he will do it, because I know, he fucking feels bad for not speaking to Harold Ramis until right before he died. He does. There's some part of Bill Murray who's like, if they're going to make it Ghostbusters, they're going to make it different. It's gonna be a real movie and not just. I think he always felt like any sequel to Ghostbusters was just a cash grab. I think that's what he thought. Bill Murray has become a more dramatic actor. He does more like art movies. He doesn't want to do this big Ghostbusters just for the sake of making money. But if he gets a script in his hand or something, or he talks to Jason or Dan or anybody, and they're like, look, this is Ghostbusters, but this is a real movie. There's some feeling in this, and it's a tribute to Harold Ramis, then maybe he'll fucking do it. Maybe he'll be like, well, I feel like I have to, because he was an asshole to Harold Ramis, and he just didn't talk to him for like his entire life since fucking Groundhog's Day. Like, that's that's shitty that happened. No matter whose fault it is, it's a shitty thing. And maybe he'll feel like, maybe I should make up for this a little bit and do this movie. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's hard. It's really hard to go one way or the other, but I think he could be in this.
I think Bill Murray's in it, and I think Dan Aykroyd spilled the beans on that back in November.
Yeah.
Well, I could see it, especially because you think about, at this point, both of them are going to be in Zombieland 2. Then you also got to think about, like Jakey said, Bill's into doing all these like artsy indie kind of movies. So what director do they hire? The guy who does all these big artsy indie movies. Plus he's connected to the franchise and to Ivan and to Harold. And he's just like, hey, I just want to get everybody back together to do this movie and pay tribute to Harold. Like, it's going to tug on Bill's heartstrings. I do think that I agree with the idea that, Dan is the heart, like Ray is the heart of the Ghostbusters. If this is going to be a more emotional movie that touches on that stuff, he's probably going to carry a lot of the emotional weight, at least as far as it pertains to everything Ghostbusters that's happened so far. I think if Bill is in it, it's probably a small role. Like, I would expect him to not be in it for too long, but I do think the moments that he is in it are going to be the ones that will pack the most punch. Like, it's going to be those moments where they're really hammering home, like, here's the last time everyone's going to be together, or here's him showing up to give the official, like, hey, there's going to be a specific passing of the torch moment. And in that moment, Bill and Dan and Ernie and maybe even Annie will be there. Like, it'll be for those specific punch in the gut moments to be like, okay, we got everyone there. We hammered it home. Ghostbusters is back.
Abby.
Yeah.
I'm going to cry.
I'm
going to cry.
I am crying right now. Yeah.
I think Bill Murray will definitely show up in the third act. And I think our evidence to that, like I said, back in November, Dan Aykroyd posted a thing saying, hey, Ghostbusters 3 is happening. Bill Murray's on board. We'll see everybody back. And, of course, we all just disregarded it. It was back in November. We had no idea what was going on, but obviously Dan Aykroyd would have. He would have known at that point, And like Craig said, he can't help but say something.
Yeah.
And looking
They're
back
just
on
all
that
hoping.
comment,
Everyone else is just banking on the fact that we don't believe Dan Aykroyd anymore.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The boy who cried wolf. It's true.
Here's a prediction. Bill Murray is in this movie. The final thing he says before whatever happens at the end of the movie is, "See you on the other side, Ray."
Stop it.
God.
Stop it.
Oh my
Damn
God.
it! Yes.
That's perfection.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure,
I would
Dr.
openly
Venkman.
weep in the theater.
Fuck me.
Regarding
Guys, this movie, even if this movie is a ton of fun, it's scary, it's exciting, it's action-packed, it's whatever, like, we're all going to be a mess by the time it's over. We're going to be a mess halfway through. We're going to be a mess the first time Dan Aykroyd shows up and lets everybody know that his name is Ray Stantz. Like, you are going to have to pack every pocket in your flight suits with tissues when we see this movie.
dude.
Abby, what were we going to say?
Yeah.
He doesn't
I-
show up in a taxi cab.
I think I brought tissues to answer the call, and I didn't use. I think I might. Who knows? I don't think I used them. I think I will be using them in this movie when it comes out. Whether or not I think Bill Murray's going to be in it, I don't. By the end of this podcast, after listening to you guys talk, I do think he is going to be in it now. Initially, I would have said probably not, but then again, I look at Answer the Call, and he was in that, and he's. There was a part of me that was going to say, well, maybe he would at least just voice I don't know, somehow they would do like an animated thing, or he would do a voice or do something like in a small capacity. But I think that having the Harold Ramis like pull and having Egon as a character being some sort of an anchor in this movie, I think that is even more reason for him to come back and for it to be something dignified and like art house style because it's Jason Reitman. So we just echoing everything you guys have said. I hope he's back. I think he will be, and I think it will just send this movie into a different stratosphere, and I'm pumped.
Couple thoughts real quick before we sign off. So, we're all doing the exact thing that we said we weren't going to do, which is we're all convincing ourselves about what this movie's going to be, and it's going to
True.
It's going to screw us up, but that's okay.
Guys, the movie's great.
It's gonna be great.
I think
Let's review bomb it, but positively.
right. They're going to ban us from Rotten Tomatoes for giving the new Ghostbusters
Yes.
positive reviews. Before
Best thing I've ever seen. Bill Murray was fantastic the entire movie.
So listen, a couple things. Jason Reitman, when the announcement was made, he obviously has a lot of reverence for the franchise and said he wants to unwrap this movie like a present with characters old and new. They have not I personally think whatever the big announcements are that they're going to make are either going to happen at FanFest, not Comic-Con. Like if FanFest is a couple weeks before filming, so I wouldn't be surprised. Obviously, I think we all assume that Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson will play some part of this movie. Whether or not Annie Potts, Rick Moranis, Sigourney Weaver, all of that remains to be seen, right? I do think Bill Murray is going to be in this movie, and I'm going to take a bold prediction. I think he's going to be a big part of this movie. For some reason, I just have this feeling that, because nobody's talked about Bill Murray. Nobody's asked about Bill Murray. I think because everybody just assumes he won't be in it, is the perfect time for him to be like, no.
He's drunk on some golf course.
Well, that's just what he does. Jason Reitman, when Harold Ramis died, tweeted that Egon was his favorite Ghostbuster and he felt like he lost one of the Beatles. I feel like the Spangler legacy is going to be all over this movie. I think that, I know the Crossrip touched on this a little bit, I think we could see Janine as a widow in this movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're prepared for that.
Psychic belief.
Mm-hmm.
No, a widow to Louis Tully is what I'm saying. So yeah, I think that let's wrap it up. This is the first of many conversations that I'm sure we should just make this a thing. Even if we don't record it, I'm having fun. Why don't we roundtable some final thoughts, excitements, concerns, 30 seconds, and then we'll sign off. Abby, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'm excited about literally everything that I've heard surrounding this movie. I've honestly, the only concerns I have are related to the experience that I had with Answer the Call in 2016. So I don't want to be all in with the risk of being emotionally traumatized. And so I feel good.
I feel like now's the time for that cathartic like talk about the night of Answer the Call, like what you went through.
Yeah.
Abby was the first one out of all of us to know that.
I knew it when I walked out of that movie. I literally got back to the hotel room. I remember Dan Harshman, you left that hotel room that night. Like, I didn't want to say goodbye to anyone because I was literally crying under the sheets because I was very upset about the movie because I knew it for a fact that it wasn't something that I was into. And I knew it was going to be a long road of saying I liked it and then trying to accept it and find things I liked about it. And it was like a whole mess, and it was basically just unraveled.
You were the second person to walk out of that theater not liking that film.
Yes, Paul Feig did not like it either.
Yeah.
I think.
He's a sweetheart and all that. But yeah, I'm so stoked that we're even recording this and that we have news breaking about Ghostbusters and that there's articles, whether they're annoying and controversial and clickbaity, like that's whatever. I am just happy that Ghostbusters is alive and well and breathing and that there's an actual live action movie coming out, because we were talking about FanFest announcements before anything actually came out, and we were saying it would be super badass to have an actual announcement for a live action movie, but that sounded like an impossible thing, and now it's like really real and it's going to be filming soon. And I'm just fucking stoked to have you guys alongside with me to talk about all the details as they come out. It's exciting.
Cool.
Woo.
Jake?
Yeah, I don't think I have any concerns at this moment, because it's just like everything feels new and fresh again, and it feels good, and there's not enough info for me to be worried about anything at this point. It just all seems fun to me right now, and I'm just excited that it's happening, and for more announcements. And I just I don't know, man. It almost, like I've said this on the show, that it almost doesn't feel like a real thing that's happening. It feels like, because we had so much false starts for so long, that it almost, every time you hear anything about Ghostbusters, you're just like, well, that's not going to happen, because that's what happens with Ghostbusters. we say there's something happening and it just doesn't happen. So that's how I feel. But at this point, we're like, oh wait, there's a teaser already. There's this is that. It's fucking happening.
Hold on,
I'm fine.
Jake, rebuttal to that: when Paul Feig came on the podcast and said that Answer the Call in no way, shape, or form would connect to the original universe, that happened. He was not lying.
That did happen.
That did happen.
Hey, that happened. But remember how we didn't believe him?
Yeah, we're like, yeah, right, Paul.
Yeah, right, Paul.
You gotta say that. But we can get in a whole other can of worms there, because I don't think he even really knew that, because obviously they fucking tried to put that Gozer shit in the end of the movie, Exactly.
All right. Dan, final thoughts?
Yeah. So excited. I really want to touch on and expand on what Abby said. I was there with you guys when we all got to go and the premiere of Answer the Call, and I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. I really wouldn't. Even not looking forward to that film entirely, I made the decision that I may never get a chance to go and see a Ghostbusters premiere again in my entire life. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going. And threw the money down, got out to LA, and got to spend a really wonderful weekend with you guys and everybody else. And we got to go and see the theater. And it was really incredible being in the theater. And I remember the credits roll and everybody sits through and we see the wonderful Ryan Kemp tribute. And then the theater lights come back up and everybody stands up and starts clapping. And I'm just sitting there. And it's just me. It's just me sitting there. Yeah. Like, I'm not clapping or anything. Everybody else is just elated, I guess. And walking out of there and being disappointed that it was what I was worried it was going to be. But damn it, I'm going to do it again. If they invite us again out to LA, I will sure as shit be there.
Even if they don't invite us.
What's that?
I said, even if they don't invite us, we're gonna go.
Yeah. No, I'll be there again. A few things that I'm really excited for the new movie is new gear. I want to see new gear. Yes. I just want to at least see the old gear too. You know, I don't even need a proton pack as we know and love it to be used. I just want to see it. Is it on a table? Is it taken apart? Is it dusty? I just want to see it again.
For continuity's sake.
And yeah, and the teaser showing the Ecto 1. I can't talk about that. But you know, just the teaser and seeing the Ecto 1 kind of told me that this is gonna, you know, deliver on some of the things I absolutely must see in a Ghostbusters movie, while delivering things that I'm not expecting, and that makes me really, really excited for this. And I'm really excited for new merchandise, new characters, new plots, new everything. And yeah, you know, I'm trying not to overhype it. I'm trying not to draw my expectations to a point where they won't be met. But it's so difficult being a fan and not doing that. But I continuously remind myself that this is going to be a big surprise and it's going to be different. So I'm at least trying to put myself in that mindset that this will be different, new, and foreign. And that just kind of makes me even more excited about it, that I don't know what to expect. So I guess the next big thing I'm looking forward to is, you know, casting announcements and seeing all the really great news coming out of FanFest. I'm bummed that I can't go. I'm not bummed about the price points. I think they're fair, and I think our whiny ass community is just that, whiny.
HarshCon 2019.
Oh God, I'll be there. Yeah, HarshFest, apparently it's gonna be HarshFest.
Or is my mom?
I'll have my own casting.
My mom called me and asked me if we got our tickets to Ghost Fair.
That's it. We're renaming T-shirts. It's becoming Ghost Fair.
I want a Ghost Fair
my hot
T-shirt.
take is very similar feelings to where we were in 2016, but like with Answer the Call, even though I was a very vocal opponent when that film came out, I am going to still give this film, no matter what news comes out, its fair shake, just like I did with Answer the Call. And hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and just be excited.
Cool. John, finish us out, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I mean, we're all talking about our experience at the premiere. I remember being on the edge of my seat, ready to just like breathe that movie in, and getting literally to the last shot of the movie where they're standing on the roof of the firehouse and they see the city all lit up saying, "We love Ghostbusters," and just having this like confusing feeling of like, I didn't hate it, but I'm definitely not feeling what I thought I would feel at the end of a new Ghostbusters movie. Like, I was expecting to be in tears and to be like, oh my God, it's back again. And it's funny because then the credits hit and the song kicked in, and I finally like looked away from the screen and just saw everyone around me and realized like I'm here with 300 other people in flight suits, half a dozen of my closest friends, and we're watching a Ghostbusters movie. And I think that is the thing that made me start crying, because I walked out of that theater a blubbering mess, giving everybody hugs, looking like Ray at the end of Ghostbusters 2, like, and I love Bankman, real friendship. And then, but then, you know, like, as you guys all know, we talked about it more afterward, and we just kind of came to the realization, you know, that it wasn't the thing that we all wanted it to be or expected it to be, but it was what it was. And we're definitely in a different place now, where it's just like we feel that energy. We feel like the Ghostbusters that we fell in love with coming back to life, and there's this excitement of just like, you know, it's in new hands, but it's in hands that have a connection to the original. It's like narratively, like it just feels like it's in a place where if you're gonna do something new with that setting and those characters, you have to do something interesting, and you need to take it to new places, and that's exciting. I'm excited for everything about it. I can't think of a thing that I'm concerned about. I mean, I have little like nitpicky fanboy concerns, like you know, like Dan said, I want to see new gear, but I also understand we're starting in a place where it looks like Ghostbusters has not functioned for a while, and the old gear is rusting, and maybe a threat appears and they're like, we got to do something, and that's all they have. But I'm excited to see how that evolves. I'm excited for where this leads franchise as a whole. What's, you know, Ghostbusters 4 and 5 and the new cartoon and all the other stuff that might spin out of this, what's that going to look like? The thing that excites me is just feeling like this thing start to take breaths again and start to like show signs of life when it hasn't moved for so long. And that is exciting to me.
God forbid.
How about that for a fourth?
Yeah. God forbid they bust out a proton pack in this movie and it has a Ghostbusters 1 ribbon cable on it, not a Ghostbusters 2 ribbon cable. And they don't explain exactly.
No, it shouldn't have either one. It should have a video game ribbon cable on it. Obviously.
Oh, that's not happening. What happened? Where's the license plate from Ecto 1A? Where is it?
I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but I think if we see a traditional pack on screen, I don't think we'll be disappointed with what we see.
Well, I hate the Ghostbusters 2 ribbon cable. It better be the first one.
Well,
Dan knows
you'll be
something.
hearing from SpectraStrip's lawyers on note.
SpectraStrip. Hi, we're from Spectra. We're back. SpectraStrip is also back. So
Yeah,
listen,
I'm pumped about it. I'm excited. It's all good.
yeah, and at least if anything, it's going to be like a Stranger Things ripoff. So that'll be good. All right, cool.
God, I hope
That
so.
feels good.
Listen, everybody, this was a lot of fun. I had so much fun that I think we'll probably do this again.
Yeah, and
Man,
can we
as soon
please
as-
have Ghost Fair and Harsh Fest t-shirts available in the shop soon?
Yeah, and as soon as more tangible breaking news happens, we'll get back together and we'll all stress out.
Yay.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Ongoing
good.
series.
Now,
Perfect.
the one thing I do want to make sure, I know FanFest, huge big thing, but I'll be seeing you guys at Dragon Con, right?
We will be there.
Oh, hell
we
yeah.
will be
I'm
there.
going to do my best.
Awesome.
Yeah.
If I'm not there, just
Very
walk.
awesome.
Hey, if I'm not at Dragon Con, get in an Uber, and 8 minutes later, you can get to my house and be like, Craig, why are you at Dragon Con? Yes, PKU Search should be a lot of fun this year. We'll be celebrating the 35th anniversary of Ghostbusters, the 30th anniversary of Ghostbusters 2, and God, who knows what other kinds of information we'll have by then. So, should be a good time.
Yes.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the Yes Have Some Patreon feed. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bonus.
Bye, guys.
Bye. See ya.
Bye.